Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a fraudulent homeowner association stopped existing 10 years ago and now demands that we still pay HOA dues, otherwise they threaten to put a lien on our properties and foreclose our homes. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the legal advice story. And the title Legal Advice Story starts like this. I just found out that the HOA at one of my investment properties forfeited their entity 10 years ago, but has still been charging HOA dues annually. I started digging recently after the HOA president emailed everyone threatening to put a lien on our properties if they did not pay their dues. And basically Ripe Star, since OP is posting this on r/legaladvice, he now wants advice on what to do from Reddit. Comment number 1 said, important to know that if the state has involuntarily dissolved the association as a corporate entity, that does not get rid of the association itself. They are still represented as a covenant on the deed and still can cause lots of trouble. You need to get legal counsel to kill it off and remove the deed restrictions. It's never as simple as it looks. And then OP answered this comment and said, certain jurisdictions don't allow HOAs to fine, ask for attorney fees, sue or defend in court, or charge homeowner assessments without being up to date with management certificates, filings, etc. Plus, they lost their non-profit exemption. He is calling himself the HOA president, representing a non-profit organization, which is misleading to homeowners. And then who voted him in as HOA president? There has never been any notices or anything about voting. I still think if it went down to the wire, he would be in serious trouble misleading homeowners by taking HOA dues and not having annual meetings and minutes, and of course no votes and not filing with the IRS. Then there was another comment which said, it's a big leap from they let their corporation lapse to fraud. The question is, how were they spending the money? Registering with the state is not a magical ward against fraud. They should have been holding annual elections for the directors. Was that happening? By the way, nothing sketchy about allowing people to send dues to a house instead of a PO box, it's just faster. Again, using a PO box does not magically prevent fraud. Honestly, we just use a PO box for continuity when we get a new treasurer. You might also look into the insurance coverage. I would think the insurance company would have noticed a lapse like that. Comment number 3, the deed still dictates the restrictions. If the dues were properly used for the upkeep of common property, they are simply trying to adhere to their deed restrictions. Before accusing them of any wrongdoing, why don't you visit your property and ask where your dues have been used? HOA board members are not tax experts or lawyers, they are homeowners trying to do a good job for their community generally. They may not have any idea that the corporate status of the HOA had changed. Then OP answered to this comment, HOAs are corporate entities regardless of what they use the funds for, even if it was in good faith, which may carry some sympathy from the judge or jury and change a fraud or gross negligence judgment to common negligence, but it does not change the fact that what they did caused damage. The damages are collecting HOA dues while their corporate entity and non-profit tax exemption were forfeited 10 years, not just 1 or 2. It's willful because they would have had to file with the IRS and the IRS would have told them that they didn't exist, which would cost money to reinitiate. They knew about this for 10 years and still misled homeowners and took the money. What they use it for is besides the point, but I think in this case they likely pocketed the difference since they have a negative balance. The question is not whether they owe money, because they will end up paying, but whether this is criminal. And now we got an update from OP about the whole situation. So update number 1, the HOA president got a lawyer, only representing the HOA president, not the HOA or the other directors, and responded saying that the HOA president was not acting for profit, was acting in the best interest of the HOA this whole time, and had no idea about the accounting and lack of compliance of the HOA, since it was not his specific duty. Therefore, there are not any damages to pay up, and that they are currently working on reinstating this HOA. I responded by saying that fraud and/or gross negligence would not protect the HOA president under the non-profit charity worker protection, and that he represents the HOA and therefore he could be held liable as well. The lawyer did not respond after that. I received bank statements and some receipts from the other HOA board members, which were not represented by a lawyer. However, they were not able to reproduce tax statements. When I asked for them again, they just responded that they were currently working on reinstating as an HOA, which means they have not filed taxes for the past 10 years as a tax-exempt HOA. I then demanded them giving me 1. Information on how to contact the other homeowners, number 2. Immediate recusal of the HOA president, and number 3. My HOA dues returned immediately, otherwise I commence legal action and get the IRS and the State Attorney General involved. So far they have not responded. I'm gonna talk to the HOA president's lawyer one more time to see if they wanna make a settlement offer before I get my lawyer involved to file suit. Edit, I'm gonna file complaints with the IRS and Attorney General. I spoke with my lawyer and he is interested in taking the case. I'm giving them until Monday EOD to respond to my final demand letter. Otherwise I'll be filing suit. Edit again, I filed complaints with the IRS and now I'm in conversation with their lawyer about settlement. Also, I figured something else out. Not only is there economic damages, but also special damages. If I were to sell this home, I would have to disclose that this property was under a defunct HOA that did not follow laws and regulations and was mismanaged for the past 10 years, which means a loss in property value and/or intangible damages. So if they don't settle, I'll be suing for HOA dues and loss of property values. Let's see what their lawyer says. I'm still pro se with my lawyer waiting to join in on the action. Another edit, my lawyer is stating that the HOA president had no idea that the charter was out of existence and that I still benefited from the work he did around the place. I gave them until today to send me a settlement offer. I guess I have no choice to bring in my lawyer now. Another edit, the defendant is attempting dodging getting served. All attempts including constable, electronic and regular mail have now failed. Attempts at books and records failed for tax records, which they admit they are still working with the IRS to get those records. We'll be looking to one more attempt at a certified mail through constable and then writing a motion for default judgment. Another edit, the case is still ongoing and active. They have dodged all 3 attempts at constable's citation service. Now going for constable's certified mail. I've already done regular mail and electronic service. This will be the last step and then I will request either default judgment or a request for court order for them to respond. I have researched the laws in my state pertaining to this, and a service by email once all other attempts are exhausted works for proper notice of citation, as long as the email can be identified as the defendant's email. Fortunately, I spoke with the HOA president recently from his email. Update number 2, so I did some reading and I figured something out. In my state, a forfeited entity cannot sue or defend itself and also places the liability of any losses or damages by the HOA squarely on the directors who are board members. I decided to just file a petition in district court pro se, assessing damages mainly from damage to home values. I did not mention this specific number in the petition because we would have to report all this fraudulent stuff on the seller's disclosure when wanting to sell. We can let the judge decide how much that would affect property values. I also asked for a declaratory judgment to the effect that the HOA be dissolved legally. Filing the petition cost $350. I will bring in a lawyer during settlement talks or if things get complicated. Either way, I emailed the HOA board the filed petition, curious to see how they defend this. Especially if the entity which I'm now suing cannot defend itself because it doesn't exist. Update, petition was accepted, filed and stamped by the district court. Another update, I spoke to the HOA president's lawyer who wouldn't tell me the address of the HOA to serve, but told me the HOA president was willing to accept the petition on the HOA's behalf. Amended petition and added HOA president as defendant, e-file and served and now serving through the service of process. Also working on finding an expert appraiser who will value the property, knowing what is happening at the HOA and will work on getting an affidavit from them. Update number 4, 1 year later, the case finally went to trial after many delays by the defendants. At trial I was able to present compelling evidence that the HOA entity had been involuntarily dissolved by the state over 10 years ago for failure to file required documents and pay fees. The HOA president and board continued collecting mandatory dues from homeowners and exercising HOA powers without legal authority during this entire time. They failed to hold proper elections, meetings, keep records, file taxes, or comply with any other legal obligations of a registered HOA. An expert appraiser valued the diminution of my property value at 15% due to the unresolved issues with the now defunct HOA. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering the dissolved HOA entity is hereby declared null and void. The individual defendants are personally liable for refunding all HOA dues collected without authority over the past 10 years, which amounted to over $50,000. The defendants must also pay $30,000 in damages to compensate for the drop in my property's market value. Number 4. All properties in the development are hereby released from any further HOA obligations or control. The defendants attempted an appeal, but it was denied. I have now received full payment on the judgment. After a long legal battle, I finally have closure on this HOA scam. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you still enjoy these legal advice stories, then please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously. The next one is a petty revenge story. I stumbled across this subreddit and decided to share a story of petty revenge from my youth. 14-year-old me was a menace to society. She had her fair share of respect for authority and rules, but if you tried to impose a ridiculous rule on her and she found the tiniest of loopholes, she would exploit it to kingdom come. Set the scene, I'm in middle school and it's almost Easter, so every class is putting up a kiosk for a bazaar. You are allowed to sell anything, legal obviously, crafts, pastries, art, etc. My class wants to make some money to fund a trip. I've always liked cooking and making desserts, so I offer to make crepes for us to sell. I get up at an ungodly hour every morning and make them to make sure they are fresh. I wear gloves and a hairnet and make sure to sanitize everything to ensure it was safe. A classmate brings bananas because his dad owns a grocery store, someone else brings honey their relatives sent to them because they live in a rural area, etc. You get the point. Team effort. We are up and running in no time and making mad bank. A lunch break, we always have a huge queue of kids waiting to buy our crepe. Unfortunately, that means that the other kiosks are not getting as much business. We are on good terms with most of the kids from the other kiosk and they are chill about it. One kiosk has more traffic than others because they are giving out 1 to 2 homemade cookies with every purchase. So after a few days, the girls from the cookie kiosk come over to us along with the headmaster. He says that we cannot sell food anymore because it's unfair to the other kiosks. I point out that the girls are also giving out cookies, to which he replies, "You can give out whatever you want for free, including food, but you cannot sell it. It's unfair competition." Again, if he had shut it down because of a health concern, we would have dropped it at the bat of an eye. Health is no joke, but claiming that it was unfair that we had a good business idea just didn't sit right with me. Everyone else was free to do what we were doing. I keep thinking about what he said. You can see where this is going, right? We were serving the crepes on those generic white paper plates. So I buy a food-safe marker, flip some plates over and start doodling, and some classmates with a knack for art follow suit. We mostly did cartoon and anime characters, and then I hang some plates up around our kiosk and change our sign to cartoon character art to currency sign, a piece plus a crepe of your choice with every purchase. And just like that, we are back in business. Just like clockwork, the cookie kiosk girls are back at our kiosk with the headmaster again the next day. "I thought I made myself clear," he says. "You did, sir," I reply and point at the sign. After a long silence, a calm facepalm, and a long "I don't get paid enough for this," he relents and I give him a crepe on the house. He also suggested I become a lawyer. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story, and it is titled Am I the A-hole for yelling at my SO? A bit of background, I'm terrified of fire. I've had traumatic experiences when I was a child and I cannot go near it. I'm going to therapy, but it's a long healing process. This does mean that there are certain things that annoy my husband, like when we decided to buy a house, I asked if we would get an electric stove or replace the gas one. It annoyed him, but he accepted. Other things like I have to stand far away when he's having a barbecue also annoy him, which is completely understandably irritating, but I cannot change it. One night though, I just finished making dinner and went to give him a back hug, aka arms wrapped around his shoulders kind of hug, and he instantly pulls out a lighter from his pocket and holds it close to me. I freak out and try to get away from the lighter. When he finally puts it away, I yell at him and I'm crying, asking him why he thought that was a good idea. He told me that he heard of exposure therapy and he was sick of my antics. When he comes near me again, I yell at him to stay back and run out of the room, locking myself in the bedroom. It's only when I'm alone that I break down crying. In the morning he won't talk to me, saying that he was only trying to help and yelling at him made him feel like crap. I wonder if I overreacted here. So Reddit, am I the a-hole here? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Anyway, comment number 1, not the a-hole, and it's all in those words. Those words show that he wasn't coming from a place of kindness, just cruelty and frustration. This was not him trying to help, this was him just being an a-hole. It would be the same as throwing a spider at an arachnophobe. I've got little tolerance for those that cannot make reasonable adjustments for those that have genuine phobias. If you could click your fingers and get rid of your phobia, I'm sure you would. Most of us would. The fact he thinks this is antics shows a staggering lack of empathy and a grand display of ignorance. Has he not even tried to understand phobias? He has an entire internet's worth of knowledge at his fingertips to be less ignorant. The fact that he hasn't says nothing good about his character. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, he was not helping and you did not overreact. Exposure therapy is a thing, yes, but it's a thing that is conducted by trained mental health practitioners and it's not appropriate for all phobias. He was not trying to help, he was being an a-hole. Comment number 3, not the a-hole, the exposure therapy line and the only trying to help was BS. Exposure therapy is done in a controlled setting and it's done when you're expecting it with prior planning. Even if you were not pyrophobic, randomly lighting a lighter and holding it close to someone is a-hole behavior anyway. You did not overreact. Update to the story, he still was not talking to me after 3 days, so I confronted my husband. I told him that I hoped that he really meant the best, but it's actually made me lose trust in him. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to trust him for a little while. He brushed it off, rolling his eyes and saying that it wasn't that big of a deal. I simply replied that it was a big deal for me and I know that my trauma may be annoying to him, but that did not give him the right to do that. Afterwards, he reluctantly agreed when I asked for marriage counseling. I told my psychologist about what he did and she was horrified and suggested marriage therapy. Unfortunately, each time it was time for our appointment, he would make some kinda excuse not to go. He was staying late at work, there were no groceries, so he had to go shopping, etc. and I grew frustrated. I asked him if he really wanted to make things work and he didn't answer straight away. He said that he was only trying to help and by making him seem like the bully, that I wasn't appreciative of him and all the things he had to accommodate for my antics. That was the last straw. I placed my wedding ring on the table and I left. So now I'm staying at a friend's house and I'm in contact with a lawyer. I'm forever thankful to you, Reddit, for all your kind words. I don't know what to do at the moment as he has set my progress back a lot, but I think eventually I'll be okay. And now I'm surrounded by people who care about me and don't think of my trauma as annoying. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I have found that people are generally respectful towards me for being a serviceman, and when I was forced to retire from the military, that respect and admiration never really changed. However, this story is not about those people. This is more about the type of person that for one reason or another dislikes the military. So this was a little while ago now, but it was soon after I retired from the military. I had lost my arm to an IED while I was working bomb disposal with my best friend Noura. She is a Belgian Malinois and the best sniffer going. She became my therapy dog during my physiotherapy and continues to be my closest companion next to my wife. When we first moved into our new place, it seemed nice enough. It was an open area with a lot of space between neighbors, but that did not get in the way of the sense of community. Everyone was really close, well, mostly everyone. I knew one of my neighbors pretty well, an elderly couple which was retired. They had been living in the same house since the day they got married. The other neighbor, who I shall call Karen for this, I would not meet until about a week later. She was off on a holiday or something. I was pre-warned about her though by the guy that lives across the road. He told me Karen was a pacifist. I have met plenty of pacifists in my time, even in the military, and they were always a source of good conversation. I just figured that she would be bending my ear whenever we met and drag me into long debates about human aggression or some such matter. But boy, was I in for a treat. The first time I met Karen, she shied away from me like I was some kind of predator, barely giving me a grunt of acknowledgement. I was fine with it though, there was enough space between us that we never really needed to mingle in any way. I will just keep to myself and I was fine with that. A few days later, my wife had put some washing out, including my old military uniform, which I wanted to get cleaned up, pressed and framed. When I went out to get the washing in, I found my uniform missing from the line and unceremoniously dumped in the trash can. I figured it was probably kids that live about here. I was later informed that it was Karen because of course it was. I went around there to ask her why she felt it was necessary to come onto my property and throw my stuff in the trash. What followed was a deep lecture about why I was the scum of the earth for wanting to go off to war and kill. People are welcome to their own opinion and all, but this was not the right way to express it, especially not when you trespass and vandalize other people's property. I warned her to stay away from me and my dog. That sent her off on a whole new tangent and the insults flew fresh. I laughed when she said she was gonna report me for animal cruelty. After that, things died down a little bit and I was able to enjoy my time in relative peace. I say relative because every now and then Karen and I would cross paths. I would hear her mumbling disrespectful crap under her breath telling me how I was gonna burn in hell and face punishment for all the lives I have taken. Not that I've ever so much as fired a rifle outside the ranges, I was bomb disposal and spent most of my time training Nura or at camp gates. I would pretty much put Karen from my mind and spend the next couple months concentrating on adjusting from military life to civilian and focusing on my physiotherapy. It was tough getting used to only having one arm, but man was it exciting to see where prosthetics were headed. It was at this time that Naru started to get sick. We took her to the vets and found out that it was food poisoning. She was eating some kind of bad meat. I did not understand as I checked the fresh stuff we get each week and none of it looked rank. We even asked the pet store about the stuff and they claimed that they had very stringent health and safety checks in place to ensure they only got the best stuff. Naru was still getting sick and we could not figure out why. We changed her diet several times and everything. Then the truth hit when I went out to mow the lawn and the blades caught on something. It smelled so bad. I don't know if you've ever smelled rotting meat before, but it has a very distinct and nasty odor. I did what any sane person would do. I posted up in the spare bedroom and watched. When I couldn't watch, I made sure to always do a clean sweep of the lawn. It took a couple of days, but I caught Karen throwing chunks of meat over the fence. I threw open the window and yelled down at her and got the police involved. They gave her a warning that was pretty frustrating. If she had tried to poison a person, she would have gone to jail. All I could do was hope it would be enough to get this woman to back off, but it didn't, obviously. During the height of summer, a lot of my mates from the military came over to see how I was doing and to generally party like we used to. I got a big barbecue set up and tons of food and beer. It was a blast, one of the best days of my life, and not just because all my buddies came over to show their support. We were doing some warm-up drinking in the morning, nothing crazy, mostly sitting around a fire pit and sharing stories and catching up. There was no music, no shouting or anything. There were even kids about and several dogs, but they were not overly excitable, they were service dogs. So, to my surprise, the cops came by because someone had made a noise complaint. They were actually quite reasonable and hung about a bit to confirm we were not being noisy or were looking for a free hot dog. I knew it was Karen. I hoped that her plan being thwarted, she would leave us alone, but sometime into the afternoon, when the air was filled with the smell of burgers and chicken, I heard a familiar voice. Karen stood in my backyard shouting at some of my buddies and giving them the same tired lecture on how they were all going to hell. Enough was enough, I thought. No more trying to be nice and avoiding conflict. I had to confront her hard, and I did. I stormed right up to her and with my best parade voice started shouting back at her and telling her it was not okay for her to come onto my property and harass my friends. We must have looked pretty imposing, 10 of us standing around her, our highly trained dogs growling, but it was all just a show. She retreated with her tail between her legs and left us alone for a little while anyway. Someone called out that Karen was marching up my driveway, armed. I panicked. I thought I had pushed too hard and she was coming with a gun. Kids were hurried inside by our wives and the rest of us instinctively spaced out around the garden. Karen then came into the backyard, eyed me right away and raised a small can of bear spray. If you've never heard of bear spray, even just being in the proximity of it is enough to make your eyes water. The stuff is worse than mace, it is for bears. I'll also tell you this, never approach a serviceman with any kind of outward aggression when their service dog is nearby. Naru, bless her, started barking and growling. This triggered the other 5 service dogs. Karen did not seem at all fazed as she let loose with her spray. Fortunately, Karen missed most of the dogs, but like I said, just being in the proximity of the stuff is enough to send you reeling. The dogs all whimpered and backed off, leaving Karen coming at me with a hammer. She did not make it very far and I still don't get what she was hoping to achieve, but before she could make it 2 steps, everyone jumped Karen and disarmed her. Karen was absolutely raging at this point, especially mad about the fact that her little plan did not work. With a smug grin in her face, she screamed that we hurt her, she got a small scratch on her elbow, and that she will call the police and get us arrested. We did not have to put up with her shouting and rambling for too long when the cops came to pick her up. Let's just say, it did not work out as planned for her. The cops did not really believe her, and why would they? Last I heard, she was gonna be facing a long term for animal cruelty, trespassing, and such. I got a restraining order against her too, just in case, not a big one, just enough to make sure she cannot even walk around half of her house. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.